So hello, everybody. Welcome to this hour, this short seminar. And so we're talking about aging. And there's one thing for sure, this is planet Earth and nobody gets out alive. We all get born, we all die. Or really, to correct that, we all come into this dimension via a physical body. We take on the cloak of the body. We live our life with our given identity and our given spacesuit, our body, and at the end, our body gets old and it gets too old to carry on, and one by another, we die and we go back to where we came from. Now, that of course is not a given. That's an assumption. But it's an assumption with lots of good reason. And it's an assumption which one can approach through inner knowing, but not outer knowing, not theories about, because there aren't any theories about, only through inner knowing. So anyway, we're here to talk about aging. We're here to look at what it means to grow old. So my qualifications, I've just had my 87th birthday. I was born in 1935. And so mathematically, I can't get away from it. I can't kid anybody. Mathematically, I'm 87. But then there's many ways of being an age like that. There's many ways of being 87. And of course, some of them are being already deceased, because the average age, I think, nowadays is more around 80. It's slightly different for men and women. I think you tend to live a little longer, but and it's slightly different from country to country. But I've outlasted my ancestors, and I've not had any nudges to prepare to leave the body yet. And however, I've lost my hair, I've lost my teeth, I wear glasses. There's a few bits don't work like they used to. And that's one of the things we have to we have to work with and live with. So what does it mean to age? Now, in the old cultures, in our ancestors, it used to mean becoming an elder. An elder teaches the younger. An elder is a resource. An elder with life experience knows more of the ropes of life than the younger. And so the elders were revered. And in the tribes of old, it was the elders who kept the tribe together, the teachings together, and were the guides and helpers for the younger. Now that has ceased quite some time back in our culture, in our Western culture. And in our Western culture, most people grow to become old and not necessarily at all elders. And that's a shame, because there's a big difference. I was brought up and I was taught that a man worked until he was 65 and then he retired and then he could do what he wanted. Maybe. And a woman, well, she went through life, but somehow she never quite got in the mythology of the culture. She never quite got to retire, because there's always jobs for the woman to do. That's patriarchy. But the idea for a man was that you're kind of finished. And I remember seeing men who had felt themselves the center of things and felt important in their lives. And then after retirement, wondering what to do, what it's all about, and not very happy. I don't recommend getting old at all. I do recommend becoming an elder. And that takes a little work. It takes a little work and a little self-reflection. This is a mirror. Imagine a mirror, looking at oneself and working on those ancient questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? Ancient questions. To know ourselves. Through knowing ourselves well, then we come to know life. So, I was an engineer a long time ago. I went into engineering. I wanted to know how machines worked. As time went by, I more and more wanted to know how people worked. And especially I wanted to know how I worked, because I became seriously unhappy. And it led me to a midlife crisis. And I thought the midlife crisis, a few months rest, and I'd be back to work again. It didn't work out like that at all. A few months turned into a few years, and a few years turned into a complete change of career and purpose of life. So I became a therapist, healer, psychotherapist, call it by many names, also dance and movement therapist. And also I learned a lot about the old cultures of the planet, the old cultures whose ways and whose medicine is known under the very generalized term of shamanism, the ways of the shamans of old. And there I'm talking about healing methods and healing ways of understanding ourselves and how the universe works. So I've trained it in a mixture of different disciplines. And for me, the ones that I choose to work with are what I find works. There's an old saying in engineering: if it works, don't fix it. If it doesn't work, find another way. Well, in working with humans, it's the same. If you find a way that works, keep using it. If it doesn't work on anything, find another way. Always keep your mind open and don't go by dogma. Now, a piece of mythology has been foisted upon us, incorrect mythology. I'm going to take you through this and show you. Well, I can't show you now, but I'm going to.
Perfect.
Hello there, Hilary. Welcome. And this is the idea, the concept that we only have one life. Long ago, it was accepted all around the world that we reincarnate. We come into body, we die, we go back to the spirit world, we get reborn, and we come back into another body. And we go one life after the other. After all, one life is nowhere near enough to teach us all the ropes and challenges, all the vagaries of life. It's far too complicated, this life. But something happened. It happened in AD 553 at a church council. In AD 553, the understanding and the belief in reincarnation was brought to an end, and we were from then on told in the Christian religion that we only have one life. And the Christian religion affected many other understandings of human life. So here's an excerpt from someone who studied this. Since it's generally assumed that the belief in reincarnation is incompatible with Christianity and alien to it, it seems appropriate to elaborate on that statement. The concept of reincarnation existed in Christianity until it was attacked in AD 543 by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian, together with, I beg your pardon, by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian, together with other teachings of the learned father of the church, Origen. And it was finally condemned by the Second Council of Constantinople in 553 AD. Origen, considered the most prominent of all church fathers, with the exception of Augustine, stated explicitly in his work, De Principis, I quote, "The soul has neither beginning nor end." In other words, the soul is immortal. That's a really important piece of understanding. The soul has neither beginning nor end. Every soul comes to this world strengthened by the victories or weakened by the defeats of the previous life. Its place in the world as a vessel appointed to honor or dishonor is determined by its previous merits or demerits. Its work in this world determines its place in the world which is to follow this. So if we look at planet Earth and we consider for a moment that planet Earth is a cosmic school, on a bad day, I tend to think of it as a cosmic asylum. That's a joke. That's a little bit of humor, I hope. Well, it may not be terribly humorous at the moment when things are going really crazy, and it feels like the most insane are holding all the keys. Nevertheless, let's look at it for now as a school. We come into this all-encompassing school. We come into a body vehicle in the womb. We are at the appropriate time thrust out of the womb, and our life starts. And we live our life, we have our identity given to us, we're taught many things by our parents, both things that we will take into life that are good things and things that we'll take into life that are not so good things, and so on. And then we go through education, schooling of some kind. Interestingly, the word education comes from educare, Latin, which means to bring out that which is within. Most of the schooling we get these days is to push in a load of beliefs from outside and then test the student on their memory, their ability to receive facts and regurgitate them just the same as they've been taught. That does not actually qualify as education in the original meaning of the word. We're all unique beings and we have our wisdom deep inside. And one of the great problems of this life, as it is at the moment, is getting in touch with that deep wisdom that we already have, that knowing as against calculating and thinking. So in the school of planet Earth, we get tested in many, many different ways all the time. It's a learning environment, and we, in our older years, we reap what we have sown, and we are pushed more to the deep place inside, because we're no longer creators in the same way. We're no longer creating a future, because the future's already here. And so what we have sown, we start to reap. And that's when the real learning begins. We start to real learn. We may not be wanting to learn, but life will see to it that we learn as much as possible, because that's what life wants of us. It wants us to become enlightened, whatever that really means, enlightened. It wants us to grow past ego consciousness. It wants us to grow into the best person we can possibly become in service to the greater good of all. That's the challenge. How do we serve the greater good? That was where, in the old cultures, by helping people to become elders and to serve the collective from the point of view of having long life experience, that really served the culture. And sadly, that has very largely been lost, certainly amongst the developed world, i.e. the technological world. So that's a little sort of a little introduction. Now, I'm going to suggest you a different way of looking at your life, looking at the stages of your life. So just suppose this, and incidentally, when I say suppose, I want to just speak about beliefs. Now, in English, the language gives the word away, because if you separate the word out, belief, if you imagine it here in front of you, you've got, first of all, let's see, B, and then lie, and then F. Belief is saying B in the lie, and you'll get something beginning with F. In other words, a belief is not knowledge. A belief is something you don't know, but you hold as if it was true. And if you hold it so definitely, as if it's definitely true, and yet you don't have the knowledge, you can be very deceived. And a disbelief is, of course, just another belief. So with everything I'm saying, please don't believe or disbelieve, but please take it on board to look at and consider and feel into. So it's another way of looking at the years of life. Birth to 27. From a spiritual point of view, childhood. How about that? Childhood to 27. I say 27, around that area. When I first had this way of looking at things, it resonated with me because, yes, I was a child, I was an adolescent, I was 20s, and then 30s. And so I think I was around about 40 when I heard this teaching. But I look back and if I looked at myself, I was a child, fine. In adolescence, I was a floundering adolescent. Very, very unconfident and very unsure who I really was. In my 20s, I learned a bit. I got a little bit of, but it was 27 to 30. It was that period where things actually started to change. And then my 30s put me into a different parameter. So it's worth looking. What happened 27 up to 30? Some sort of a change happens for many, many people in that time. So childhood to 27, 27 to 30, some sort of a change, because we are going to be propelled then into spiritual adolescence. 30 to 54. How about that? How about being an adolescent up to 54? Not trying to pretend you're mature. See how that feels to you. And this is not from an earth point of view, from a culture point of view. This is from a spiritual point of view. Adolescent up to round about 54. And then 54 to 57, around there, some sort of another change. is likely to take place. For me, two changes happened. One was actually at around at 52, and the other one was at 59. So both were actually outside that. So nothing of these, this is not exact, but it's around that area. So it could take a look at your life. What happened around that area? And some of you, of course, looking at a few of you when you had the video on, I've not got there yet. Fine. But you will do, just as you will get to the kind of age I'm at. I never expected to get here. I remember thinking, in my late 20s, thinking, somebody over 40, they're past it, whatever it is. And of course, I became 40 and I kind of started life all over again. I remember being early 50s and I was asked to look after somebody of 67. And I thought, he's old. I have to, I really look after him. Well, 67, that's 20 years younger than me now. We get to all these places that we don't expect to. It's good to be a little bit prepared. So 54 to 57 or thereabouts, plus or minus, some sort of another change. Because in some way, you, as I was, will be called to maturity. Maturity, 57 to 81. Or thereabouts. Maturity. Or at least finding the maturity in ourselves over that period. And working on ourselves to achieve that maturity, achieve maturity. Now, if we can do that, and our body vehicle keeps going well, which of course, the more mature we get, the better our body vehicle will keep going. And we get to 80, 81. Well, 81 to 84 is another likely upheaval. And always remember, upheavals can be good, not bad. They're just upheavals. It's how we handle them. And then in an idealized lifestyle, something like 84 up to 108, give or take, become an elder. Or 84 until, or thereabouts, till when Spirit says, come in, your time is up. Well, I'm at the beginning of that, and I'm seeking to find full elderhood within myself. And so that's a teaching from Native American tribes. That's a teaching from there. And again, I emphasize, don't believe it, but I do emphasize, look at your life through that lens. That can be very informative indeed, and give you a guideline, a different kind of guideline to the ones you're likely to have had already. And none of it's exact. It can come earlier or later. For me, 27 to 30 was extremely important because I got the opportunity, having floundered in my 20s with lousy jobs I really didn't want to be doing. I didn't want to do them. I didn't show promise. Well, I didn't want to do jobs. Then I got an opportunity to do something I really did want to do, and I knew that I could do, which was to turn a small, thoroughly inefficient little manufacturing business round into something that worked. And I got the opportunity to do that without people telling me what to do. I was given a free hand. It's extraordinary bit of luck, and I did it. And I turned the factory around, and it turned me around. Now it did lead me by the end of another decade later to a midlife crisis, but that's got a whole lot of other reasons to it. So that's a teaching. I see Lydian the Empress I love this. I'm an adolescent spiritually. It sure does feel like it. And it sure, and everything feels like it did in my teenage years, but in a spiritual way. Good. Yes. And so the great journey of life is another teaching which will summarize the same kind of thing from a different point of view. The great journey of life, initially, the first part is really about our emotional body, emotion, water, energy, motion. Our water body, our energy body, and working with our emotions so that we both get to express our true emotions and not bottle them up, which our culture teaches us to do, but we also get to be in control of our emotions rather than having them running us. The challenge to get to know our emotional self. And in the shamanic term, to, I quote, erase personal history. That's a Heyoka term, a humorous term, because we can't erase our personal history. The point is to erase the effects of it, the negative effects of it, on who and what we are today. So to heal and release bottled up grief, to heal and release bottled up rage. Now, emotions. Rage, look at the word courage. Courage. La cour, the heart. The heart, the place of love. But the partner emotionally with love is rage. Because when there is not love, when love is frustrated and hurt, up comes rage. With grief, which is here, grief, sorrow, when we don't express our grief, we also don't fully get into our joy, because they're partners, grief and joy. And I was at a funeral recently. Actually, it was a funeral on Zoom. But most of the funerals I've been to, remarkably little grief gets expressed. I remember my own parents, when their time came, very little grief got expressed. In some countries, they're much better at doing grief. We British, I think it's West Europeans and Americans, mainly are singularly bad at doing grief. The more we can let our grief out and let the real feelings, then it can move. Then it can laugh. Because if you think of it, classically, we cry. If we cry deep enough, we end up laughing. If we laugh deep enough, we end up crying. It's a partnership. But when we stop the flow, we don't fully experience either of them. And so this movement to heal our personal history, birth to 27, to heal our personal history is to heal our emotional body so that we can move ahead with all our emotions available to us and full on, working freely. Then we move to the next part, which is earth. The earth and our physical body, what we're creating on earth, our adolescent time. It's about our earthiness, developing things, material things, creating a family, a life, and so on. And also coming to terms with death, meeting death and making death an advisor and not an enemy. Death is going to come to us anyway, eventually. If we resist and we fear it, we don't get the benefit. It then becomes an enemy. And again, our energy gets stuck. But if we embrace death as an ally and a teacher, in the sense that our time is not forever. I remember in my 30s, 20s, 30s, feeling as if, well, you know, I've got forever. I can muck about and mess about. But of course, now I know it's not forever. And the better I prepared, the better my older years will be. Well, I didn't start on my older years at all until well into 40s with change of life. But in this movement, 30 to 54 spiritual adolescents, to embrace the death in that we are not permanent, we're temporary, and thereby to let death be our advisor, meaning our temporariness. What are we going to do that we leave behind? Are we going to leave behind good things for the future? The old people say, look, see that what you do serves the next 7 generations ahead. Yeah, it's a rather a long way, say, from a politician whose interest is the next election period. It's a very different concept. 7 generations ahead. So then moving from there to the next part, maturity, stopping the world. Now that's a concept that needs explaining. How do you stop the world? What it really means is stopping the monkey mind, the yak, stopping the monkey mind and coming to see the world through energy. Now, the Bible has a way of expressing it. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Translation. In the beginning was vibration, frequency. That's what is a word? It's a vibration that carries meaning. In the beginning was frequency, vibration, energy, and energy, frequency, vibration, that is God. Creator creates all that is out of itself. That's a really important definition, because for creator to be almighty, there can be nothing else before it, or it is not it. Creator creates, creator must be the only thing that exists. So everything that exists must be inside creator, not outside. It can't be. Well, the definition's wrong. So God, which is interestingly a truncation of the word good, you take 0 out of good and you've got the word God. Almighty God, we are all inside it, not outside, inside. We may be disconnected from it, from the goodness, but we're inside it, we're part of it. Everything that exists is part of it, including what is called the devil, which if you look at that word, that is evil backwards, or devil backwards is lived. So that's a few little things to put into the mix. But the movement in maturity is to stop the world as we thought it was, and to really start to look at the world as the flows of energy, and to then in our own body to get more and more in tune with the energy matrix that actually the world really is. Now, quantum physics describes the world in the same way that the shamans of old described the world, and it describes it as energy. Newtonian physics doesn't, but Newtonian physics has been superseded, or long beforehand, I should say. Newtonian physics had serious limitations. Quantum physics has touched into the ancient wisdom, and quantum physics shows that nothing we experience is actually here the way we experience it. But because our body vehicle vibrates within a certain level of frequencies, and the matter that we experience in the same frequency, so what we experience is solid matter, for us it's solid. But coming out of your body, out of the body journey out of your body, and none of it's solid at all. It's energy in form. And that is a big journey. So I'm voicing a big journey. And it's not to be undertaken until you get into the work of healing your personal history and embracing your physicalness and making death the friend that it needs to be, the impermanence. The final movement of this, of course, is becoming truly a master of oneself and therefore a master of life. And again, that's the final and big movement of the journey. So that's in essence of the great journey of life. And it's not taught in schools. It's not in too many books. It's not, it's not out there. But nevertheless, this is the school that we're in, the school of planet Earth. So, qualities of an elder. Here's a few suggestions. An elder as risk takers who can heal and humanize society. Elders have 5 appropriate roles to play. They can be mentors who teach the young, mediators who resolve civil, racial, and intergenerational conflicts, monitors of public bodies who serve as watchdogs of City Hall and such places, for example, as the House of Commons, moderators. Mobilizers of social change and motivators of society who urge people away from self-interest and toward the public good. So that's one idea. So James Hillman, very well known in the world of psychology, he's asked, do you think we stifle our societal growth and repeatedly make the same mistakes because we limit our contact with the most experienced group of the population, the aged ones? Yes, I do, he says. It doesn't mean that all old people are wise, or necessarily any old people are wise, but it does mean that they have a stronger, firmer character, and that strength is like a keel or an anchor or a strong root for the younger group. Michael Reed, a kind of traveling singer of the old style. One of the characters I see of an elder is found in the Latin word gravitas, which means to hold gravity, to be grounded in contemporary language. I think the structures in our society will change when there is a real change with regard to understanding what the last stage of life is about. And the last stage of life is about the growth within ourselves, to die as a wise person, to die wise, and to die welcoming the great transformation. Yeah, Lydia says, I call it befriending my shadow. Yes, befriending, we all have shadow. We have to have, listen, light goes with dark, up goes with down, left goes with right, success goes with failure. In fact, some of the biggest successes in life have said the road to success is failure. How can it be otherwise? We all have, whatever it is we're trying to do, we have to learn. We have a pathway to learn that, to become good. But we have to fail along the way. That's our teaching. And then we start succeeding. But if we don't let ourselves fail, we don't get to succeeding. So everything goes in contrast. So all of us, we have a shadow. But it's whether we let ourselves be run by the shadow or advised by the shadow. That's what makes the difference. If you think of it from a point of view of power over society, if you tell people they've only got one life and they've got to do what you tell them, or they're going to, otherwise they won't get to heaven, they'll only get to hell. And you frighten people enough, you make them obedient. It's cheaper than having police. George Orwell, The Thought Police. If you've read Orwell's books, 1984, famous novel. But the church saw itself, the Roman church saw itself entitled to control the people. And that was the changing of a major tenet by a group of men, no women, simply deciding they were going to do it. Started or engineered by an emperor. So our whole teaching was changed, and we haven't recovered from it. That's why it's so important. Our collective has not recovered. I was brought up to think with one life only. That was just the accepted idea. Heaven or hell at the end of it. I don't believe anything like that now. I haven't for ages, but it's still in the culture. But it's completely false because it wasn't a teaching from any spiritual master or creator. It's a political teaching that changed our history. Look, we're in a time right now where censorship, where the power over is enormous, and the censorship and the effort to constrict, and we've had a lockdown, the effort to constrict and limit us is enormous. The pressure to agree with the narrative, or you get, Twitter, you get banned by Twitter I call it, or Facebook, and all that sort of stuff. This is power over, and it's the same level as the same kind of thing as changing a major tenet of a religion in society and saying, no, you've only got one life. Do as you're told. Believe what we tell you, or else. It's having our power taken away. And in our history, AD 553 is mega important. And anything we can do to help people to leave that forced belief behind, the lie that they've been told to be in, will help ease people's death. Because death's going to come to all of us. You can be absolutely certain of that. Like I started, they said, no, we don't get out of here alive. The point is to have a good death. A good death. A good death is when you allow yourself to go with your inner knowing nature, and when the time comes, to go. Not to let anybody drug you full of spurious medicines to keep you alive on the principle that that's a win. because it's keep you in pain. All of us, we get a time where it's good to go. If we have confidence in what's on the other side, it's much easier to go than if we've been told a lie and we are believing a lie that says we'll go to hell unless we've done X, Y, Z things, and only then will we go to heaven. Da, 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 da. It's so important that. I'll tell you a story like that. If you've heard of Hoffman process, it's the origins of that. Years ago in San Francisco, I spent 5 years in San Francisco in my healing journey, which is a great place to do it. Well, it started off, I kept hearing about a 3-month-long therapy program called Fisher-Hoffman process. And that it was magical on healing early childhood wounds. And the wounded child in me was screaming blue murder, and I just knew that was the right thing to do. And but the origin of that process is Bob Hoffman was a tailor in San Francisco and also a medium, a psychic, and a practitioner of those kind of arts. His friend Dr. Fisher was a doctor and I'm not sure if he was a psychiatrist of any kind, but certainly a student of the human condition. Dr. Fisher died, and through Bob Hoffman, still alive, he dictated over 4 nights what became the Fisher-Hoffman process. And I had been going to therapy, bits and pieces of therapy for a couple of years, and getting nowhere. Well, getting almost nowhere. And then I went to San Francisco and participated in the Fisher-Hoffman process, and it shifted all sorts of things for me. It started my journey. And so that's an example of how things can get from the other world to this world. I'll just read a little outtake from this book. It is because you believe that you were born that you fear death. Who is it that was born? Who is it that dies? Look within. What was your face before you were born? Who you are in reality was never born and never dies. So let go of who you think you are and become who you have always been. Believing we were born, we imagine ourselves this body. Expecting to die, we identify with this body as who we are. When we're asleep, though the body lies inert, yet the mind continues. The dream of life continues without the body when we dream at night. If I say, when I die, I shall no longer exist, this is the I of the mind, this me. Leo will most certainly die, but I, the soul behind Leo, no, I wasn't born, I won't die. When the I calls itself the body, it suspects impermanence. When the I identifies with the mind, it fears dissolution. Though, no, I haven't got the rest of that. But you see the gist of it. When we understand ourselves to have existed before, to go into this version of me, and at the end, to go back to the spirit world, and in due course to become another me. It's an ongoing process. And sometimes we'll be a man, sometimes we'll be a woman. Sometimes we'll be in one part of the earth, sometimes another. Sometimes we might be black, sometimes we're white. It might be yellow or red person. From that point of view, it's a great adventure. I think it's more that we experience all that we need to experience for our ultimate education. Because in a way, the great challenge of this life is it all about me, or am I in service to the whole? Who am I? Who and what am I really working for? We all have an ego nature, which at its best is our sense of self. When our sense of self is strong, then we can give. When our sense of self is weak, we tend to make all sorts of egotistical, look at me, aren't I great, show off. We try to compensate for a weak sense of ourself. And then we don't serve others, we serve self. The greatest people of the world serve the collective. And the advice to see that all we do, if we can, serve 7 generations ahead, is very different from how most of us are living. It's a big challenge. But it seems to me that the universe, this is an educational place, and the universe is looking to put us in all sorts of situations where we're really challenged to find that enlightened self within.